My name is Lorraine Whitfield. I am 76 years old. And the day my family told me they didn't need me around anymore was the same day they planted the seed that would later save them. But they didn't know that yet. Before I tell you what happened, please take a moment to subscribe to this channel, like this video, and turn on your notifications so you don't miss stories like this. And tell me in the comments what country you're watching from, so I know who is listening with me today. Because what my family did after pushing me away, and what they asked me to do when everything fell apart, still shakes me to my core. They didn't shout. They didn't insult me. They just stopped calling. That's how it started. One missed call became two. Two visits became none. And slowly, without saying it out loud, I was no longer part of the plan. I noticed it first at Sunday dinner. I showed up with my purse in my hand and my best shoes on. My daughter looked surprised. "Oh, Mom," she said, forcing a smile. "We didn't think you were coming." I laughed softly. "I always come." She glanced at my son. He avoided my eyes. "Well," she said, lowering her voice, "things are a little different now." Different. That word has a way of cutting without a knife. I sat anyway. I smiled anyway. But I could feel it. I was in the way. Over the next weeks, it became clearer. Family plans happened without me. Decisions were made without asking me. And when I spoke, conversations moved right past my words. One day, my son finally said it. "Mom," he sighed, rubbing his forehead, "you don't have to be around all the time." All the time. Like my presence was a habit they were trying to break. "I raised you," I said quietly. "And we appreciate that," he replied quickly, "but we've got things handled now." Handled? That was their favorite word. I nodded. Because when people think you are old, they expect you to accept silence with grace. But silence still hurts. The last straw came on a Tuesday afternoon. I called my daughter just to hear her voice. She didn't answer. I called again later. No answer. That evening, she finally called back. "Mom," she said, rushed, "I'm busy right now." "I just wanted to check on you," I replied. She paused. "We don't really need you worrying anymore," she said. "Just rest." Rest. Another word that sounds kind until you hear what it really means. I sat there holding the phone long after she hung up. And for the first time, I asked myself something painful. When did I become extra in my own family? I tried to pull back. I told myself they needed space. I stayed home more. I waited for calls that didn't come. Days passed. Then weeks. Then something happened. Something none of them were prepared for. Something that made my phone ring nonstop. Something that turned, "We don't need you," into, "Where are you?" But that part of the story didn't come yet. Because first, I had to learn what it felt like to be unwanted. And trust me, that lesson came before the one where they needed me most. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. After that phone call with my daughter, I sat very still. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I just stared at the wall across from me like it might explain something I didn't understand yet. "We don't really need you worrying anymore. Just rest." Rest. That word sounded gentle, but it landed heavy. Because rest was never what they meant when I was younger. When I was raising children, rest was something you earned after everyone else was settled. Rest was a luxury I didn't have time for. But now, rest felt like a polite way of saying step aside. I stood up slowly and walked into my kitchen. Everything looked the same. The clock on the wall ticked like it always had. The small table by the window still held yesterday's mail. My home hadn't changed. But my place in their lives had. I poured myself a glass of water and sat down. My hands shook just a little. Not from age. From realization. I had been pushed to the edge without being told. The next few days passed quietly. Too quietly. No calls from my son, no messages from my daughter, no updates about the grandchildren. It was like someone had turned down the volume on my life without asking me first. I tried to keep busy. I swept my floors. I folded laundry. I watched the news. I watered my plants even though they didn't need it yet. Anything to avoid the silence. On Thursday morning, I decided to go out. Not because I had somewhere to be, but because I refused to sit in a house that suddenly felt like a waiting room. I put on my shoes and walked to the small grocery store down the street. The cashier smiled when she saw me. "Good to see you, Miss Lorraine," she said. That small kindness almost broke me. I realized how long it had been since someone seemed happy to see me. That afternoon, my son finally called. "Hey, Mom," he said like nothing was wrong. "Hello," I replied. There was a pause. "You all right?" he asked. "Yes," I said, "I am." Another pause. "We've been busy," he said. "You know how it is." "Yes," I replied again. He cleared his throat. "Listen, we're making some changes, just trying to get things organized." "Changes?" I asked. "Yeah," he said quickly. "Schedules, plans, stuff like that." I waited. "You don't have to come by so often," he added. "We'll call when we need help." "When?" "Need." "Help." I closed my eyes. "So I'm only useful now," I said softly, "when there's a problem." "That's not what I meant," he replied fast. "But it's what you said," I answered. He sighed. "You're reading too much into this." "No," I replied. "I'm finally hearing it." He changed the subject. "That's what people do when they don't want to sit with the truth." That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed thinking about the years I had given without counting, the times I showed up uninvited because I was needed, the way my presence used to feel important. I thought about my grandchildren, how their little hands used to grab mine, how their voices lit up when they saw me. Now I didn't even know their schedules. I whispered into the dark, "Lord, what am I supposed to learn from this?" No answer came, but something shifted inside me. The following week, I stopped calling first. That was harder than I expected. Every time I reached for the phone, I had to pull my hand back. I had spent my whole life being the one who checked in, who reminded, who worried. Now I waited. Days passed. Then one afternoon, my sister called. "I heard you've been quiet," she said. "I'm listening," I replied. She laughed softly. "You always did have a way with words." She hesitated. "Your daughter says you've been distant." I almost laughed. "Is that what she said?" I asked. "Yes," she replied. "She's worried you're upset." I leaned back in my chair. "They stopped including me," I said, "and now they're surprised I noticed." My sister was quiet. "You know how they are," she said finally. "Yes," I replied, "and now they know how I feel." 2 days later, I found out just how far they had gone. I heard it from someone else. Mrs. Jenkins from church stopped me after service. "I heard you're taking a break from helping out with the kids," she said kindly. I frowned. "I didn't say that." "Oh," she replied, "your daughter mentioned you were slowing down." Slowing down. That word again. I forced a smile. "I'm still standing." She nodded, but her eyes held doubt. I walked home feeling smaller with every step. They weren't just pushing me aside. They were rewriting me. That evening, I called my daughter. She answered on the third ring. "Mom," she said, surprised. "I heard you told people I was stepping back," I said calmly. She hesitated. "I didn't mean it like that." "Then how did you mean it?" I asked. She sighed. "We just didn't want anyone expecting too much from you." Expecting too much. I swallowed. "You didn't ask me," I said. "We were trying to protect you," she replied. "By erasing me?" I asked. She went quiet. You don't need to be everywhere, she said finally. I closed my eyes. I don't need to, I replied, but I don't deserve to be nowhere. She didn't answer. After that call, I felt something harden inside me. Not bitterness. Clarity. I realized something important. They didn't want me around because I reminded them of responsibility, of roots, of things they thought they had outgrown. But life has a way of circling back. And when it doesn't ask permission. That night, my phone rang again. Late. Too late. It was my son. Mom, he said, breathless, we need to talk. Something in his voice was different. Not dismissive. Urgent. What's wrong? I asked. He hesitated. Then he said the words that made my heart drop. There's a situation, and we don't know what to do. I sat up straight. What kind of situation? I asked. He swallowed hard. And before he could finish his sentence, I knew. The moment they didn't want me around was over. And the moment they needed me most had just begun. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I held the phone tight after my son said there was a situation. My heart beat fast, but my voice stayed calm. What happened? I asked. He didn't answer right away. That silence told me everything. When people push you away, they think you'll always be there when they finally turn back. They don't prepare for the moment they have to explain themselves. Mom, he said finally, can you come over? There it was. Not we're sorry. Not we were wrong. Just can you come? I closed my eyes. I need to know what's going on, I said. He exhaled sharply. It's your daughter. She's not doing well. My chest tightened. What do you mean? I asked. She fainted, he replied. At work, they took her to the hospital. The word hospital hit me hard. Not because of fear. Because of memory. I had been in hospitals before for them, sitting in cold chairs, praying quietly, waiting without being asked to stay. I'm on my way, I said. He didn't say thank you. But he didn't need to. When I arrived, the house felt different. Too quiet. My daughter was on the couch, pale, wrapped in a blanket. Her husband paced the room. My son stood by the window, phone pressed to his ear. When she saw me, her eyes filled with tears. Mom, she whispered. I sat beside her immediately and took her hand. I'm here, I said. She squeezed my fingers weakly. No one told me to rest. No one said I didn't need to be around. Suddenly, my presence mattered again. The doctor's words came slowly. Stress. Exhaustion. Burnout. She's been carrying too much, he said. I looked at my daughter. I knew that look. I had worn it for years. They brought her home instead of keeping her overnight. She refused to go back to the hospital. She said she just wanted to sleep. That night I stayed. No one asked me to leave. I cooked. I cleaned. I helped her drink water. I rubbed her back when her breathing felt tight. And as I worked quietly, something inside me hurt in a way I hadn't expected. They only wanted me when everything was falling apart. The next morning, my daughter cried. Real crying. Not the polite kind. I didn't mean to push you away, she said. I thought you deserved rest. I nodded. I did, I said, but rest doesn't mean removal. She looked ashamed. I didn't think you'd notice, she admitted. That hurt more than anger. I always notice, I replied gently. Over the next few days, I stayed with her. My son came by often. He watched me move through the house like I always had, calm and steady. One afternoon, he said quietly, we don't know how you do this. I looked at him. I do it because I love you, I said, but love doesn't mean I disappear. He didn't answer. By the fourth day, my daughter was stronger. She sat up, she ate, She laughed a little, and slowly, the urgency faded. That's when I noticed something. The phone calls slowed again. My son stopped asking questions. My daughter started handling things on her own. And just like before, I felt myself being pushed gently back to the edge. Not cruelly, politely. That night, I overheard something. My son was in the kitchen on the phone. "She's better now," he said quietly. "Yeah, Mom helped for a bit, but we've got it handled again." Handled? That word again. I stood very still in the hallway. My heart didn't break. It hardened. Because now I understood the pattern clearly. They didn't want me around. They wanted me available. There is a difference. Later that evening, my daughter came to sit beside me. "You can go home tomorrow," she said gently. "We don't want you getting tired again." I looked at her carefully. "Do you want me to go?" I asked. "Or do you think I should?" She hesitated. That pause told me everything. "I'll leave in the morning," I said. She nodded. No argument. No insistence. That night, I packed my bag quietly. Just like before. Only this time, something inside me had changed. I had shown up. I had helped. I had been needed. And I had seen clearly what that meant to them. As I zipped my bag, my phone buzzed. A message from my son. "Thanks for coming when we needed you." I stared at the screen. "When? We? Needed? You?" I didn't reply. Because the next decision wasn't about them anymore. It was about me. And I knew something they didn't. The next time they needed me, I would not be the same woman who came running. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I left early the next morning. Not because anyone asked me to. Not because I was angry. But because I could feel the shift happening again. That soft, quiet push. The kind that smiles while it moves you out of the way. My daughter was asleep when I left. I tucked the blanket around her shoulders and kissed her forehead lightly. My son stood in the doorway holding his phone, already halfway back into his life. "You sure you're okay to drive?" he asked. "Yes," I replied. He nodded. "We'll check in." I almost laughed. But I didn't. I walked out carrying my bag and my thoughts. When I got home, the house felt calm. Not empty. Calm. I set my bag down and sat at my kitchen table. The same chair, the same window, the same clock ticking. Everything was still mine. And that mattered more than I realized. I made myself tea and sat quietly, letting the past few days settle in my mind. I replayed the hospital scare, the fear in my son's voice, the way my daughter reached for me without thinking. They hadn't wanted me around. Until they did. And when they needed me most, I showed up without question. But something inside me had changed. Because I saw the truth clearly now. I was not family to them. I was backup. That afternoon, my phone rang. My daughter. "Mom," she said softly, "I just wanted to say thank you again." "You're welcome," I replied. She hesitated. "You didn't have to do all that." "I know," I said. "I chose to." Silence followed. "You don't sound upset," she said. "I'm not," I replied. "I'm aware." She didn't know what to say to that. "We're trying to figure things out," she added. "I hope you do," I said gently. She paused. "You'll come by again soon, right?" I took a breath. "Not right now," I said. Her voice changed. "Why?" "Because I need time too," I replied. She didn't answer. The next few days were quiet again. No emergencies. No panic. No need. And just like before, the silence crept back in. But this time, it didn't hurt the same way. Because I wasn't waiting. I went back to my routines. I walked to the store. I talked with neighbors. I attended a small gathering at the community center. People smiled when they saw me. "You've got a peaceful look about you," one woman said. "I'm learning," I replied. At night, I slept better. Not perfectly, but better. A week later, I heard something that made my chest tighten. I heard it from a neighbor who knew my daughter. "They said you're slowing down," she said kindly, "that you've earned your rest." That word again. Rest. I smiled politely and changed the subject. But when I got home, I sat down and stared at the wall. They were doing it again. Speaking for me. Deciding for me. Without asking. That evening, I called my son. He answered quickly this time. "Hey, Mom. I heard you've been telling people I'm stepping back," I said calmly. He hesitated. "We just didn't want anyone bothering you." "You didn't ask me," I replied. "Well," he said, "after what happened, we thought." "You thought," I repeated, and left me out again. He sighed. "You're reading too much into this." "No," I replied. "I'm finally reading it correctly." He didn't like that. "You're making this difficult," he said. "I'm making it honest," I replied. Silence. Then he said something that stopped me cold. "We assumed you'd always be there." There it was. Assumed. Not appreciated. Not included. Assumed. I swallowed. "I have always been there," I said. "That's why you assumed." He didn't answer. After the call, I sat alone thinking about all the times I had put my life on pause for them, the dreams I delayed, the plans I never made because I was always needed. I asked myself a hard question. What would my life look like if I wasn't waiting to be needed? The answer scared me, because it also excited me. The next day, something unexpected happened. I got a call from my granddaughter. She was crying. "Grandma," she said, "can you talk?" Of course I could. "What's wrong?" I asked. "They're fighting again," she whispered. "Mom and Dad." My heart sank. "I don't know what to do," she said. I closed my eyes. This was familiar. Too familiar. "Are you safe?" I asked. "Yes," she replied. I miss when you were around." Those words hit me harder than anything else. Not "we need you." Not "come fix this." Just "I miss you." "I miss you too," I said. "Will you come over?" she asked quietly. I hesitated. Not because I didn't want to, but because I knew this moment mattered. "I can come talk," I said, "but I won't be moving back into the middle." She didn't understand, but she nodded anyway. That evening, I sat alone again. I realized something painful. My children pushed me away to feel independent, but my grandchildren felt the absence. They noticed the quiet where I used to be, and that meant something bigger was unfolding. Something my son and daughter hadn't thought about yet. Because when you push away the foundation, the cracks don't show right away. They show later. And when they do, everyone feels them. My phone buzzed late that night. A message from my son. "We may need your help again." I stared at the screen for a long time. Because this time, I wasn't sure I would answer the same way. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I did not answer my son's message right away. "We may need your help again." I read it more than once, not because I didn't understand the words, but because I understood them too well. Need. That word had followed me my whole life. When I was needed, I mattered. When I wasn't, I faded. I set the phone down and sat quietly, letting the feeling pass through me instead of chasing it away. For the first time, I didn't rush to prove my worth. That felt strange. And powerful. The next morning, I woke up early and made myself breakfast. I ate slowly, listening to the radio. I didn't check my phone. I didn't wait for another message. Instead, I asked myself a question I had never asked before. What do I need right now? The answer surprised me. I needed peace. I needed clarity. I needed to stop being pulled in only when things broke. I cleaned my house, not in a hurry, but with care. I opened the windows and let the air move through the rooms. I watered my plants and noticed how some had grown uneven, leaning toward the light. I smiled. They were just doing what they needed to survive. Later that day, my granddaughter called again. Her voice was softer this time. "Grandma," she said, "are you mad at my mom?" I paused. "No," I replied, "I'm not mad." "Then why aren't you coming over like before?" she asked. "Because you don't lie to children when they ask honest questions." "I'm learning how to take care of myself too," I said gently. She was quiet for a moment. "I like when you're here," she said. My chest tightened. "I like being there," I replied, "but I also need to be here." She didn't fully understand, but she accepted it. That mattered. That evening, my daughter called. She sounded tired. "We're struggling," she admitted. "Things aren't the same since everything." I listened. "I know," I said. "We don't want to burden you," she continued. Burden. Another word wrapped in kindness. "I was never a burden," I replied softly. "I was a blessing you got used to." She didn't answer right away. "I didn't mean it like that," she said finally. "I know," I replied, "but meaning isn't the same as impact." She sighed. "So what are we supposed to do?" I leaned back in my chair. "You learn," I said, "the same way I had to." She sounded frustrated. "This isn't easy." "No," I agreed. "It never was, I just made it look that way." Silence filled the line. Over the next few days, the messages continued. Not constant. Careful. Little reminders that I was still on the edge of their lives. "Can you talk later? Do you remember how you handled this before? What would you do in this situation?" I answered some. Not all. And every time I chose myself, something inside me grew steadier. One afternoon, my son showed up at my door again. No warning. He looked worn down. "Mom," he said, "we're drowning." I stepped aside and let him in. He sat heavily on the couch, rubbing his face. "We didn't think it would be this hard," he admitted. "I know," I replied. "You always made it work," he said. I nodded, at a cost. He looked up at me. "We didn't see that." "I know," I said again. He leaned forward. "We need you." There it was. Plain this time. Not polite. Not careful. Need. I took a deep breath. "I can help," I said slowly, "but not the way I did before." He frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means," I said, "I won't be erased when things are calm and pulled back in when they're chaos." He looked confused. "I won't live on standby," I continued. "I won't disappear until you're overwhelmed." He shook his head. "That's not fair." I met his eyes. "Neither was pushing me away," I said. Silence sat between us. "So what are you saying?" he asked. "I'm saying," I replied, "if I come back into the middle, it will be different." "How?" he asked. I hesitated. "Boundaries," I said. He didn't like that word. "You're making this complicated," he said. "No," I replied. "I'm making it healthy." He stood up abruptly. "So you're just going to watch us struggle?" he snapped. I felt the old pull then. The guilt. The instinct to rush in. But I stayed seated. "I will support," I said calmly, "but I will not sacrifice myself again." He stared at me like I had spoken another language. "You've changed," he said. "Yes," I replied, "because being the solution almost broke me." He turned toward the door. "I never thought you'd turn your back on us," he said bitterly. I stood up slowly. "I never thought you'd forget I mattered," I replied. He left without another word. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. I wondered if I was being too hard, too distant, too late. Then I remembered my granddaughter's voice. "I miss when you were around." And I understood something important. This wasn't about abandoning them. It was about teaching them that love does not mean self-erasure. The next lesson would be harder. For all of us. My phone buzzed just before midnight. A message from my daughter. "There's something we didn't tell you." My heart skipped. Because I knew that sentence. That sentence always came before the truth. And whatever they had been hiding was about to change everything. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I read my daughter's message again. "There's something we didn't tell you." Those words carry weight. They don't arrive gently. They arrive like a knock you didn't expect late at night when your heart is already tired. I didn't reply right away. I lay back on my bed and stared at the ceiling, letting memories rise on their own. Every time my children had said something like that in the past, it was because they had decided something for me. Something they thought I wouldn't understand. Something they thought would be easier if I found out later. Later always hurt more. I picked up the phone and typed slowly. "Tell me now." 3 dots appeared. Then disappeared. Then appeared again. Finally, my phone rang. It was my daughter. "Mom," she said quietly, "can you come over tomorrow?" My stomach tightened. "You can tell me on the phone," I replied. She hesitated. "It's better in person," she said. That hesitation told me everything. "I'll come," I said, "but I won't be surprised. I'm tired of surprises." She didn't respond to that. I barely slept. By morning, my chest felt heavy, but my mind felt sharp. I moved slowly, carefully. I made breakfast and forced myself to eat even though I didn't feel hungry. Strength doesn't come from panic. It comes from preparation. When I arrived at their house, everyone was there. My son. My daughter. Her husband. The room felt tight. No one offered me tea. No one smiled. I sat down anyway. "Just say it," I said. My daughter looked at my son. He looked away. Finally, she spoke. "We've been talking," she said, "about the kids." I nodded. "Go on." "They've been struggling," she continued, "since you stopped coming around so much." My chest ached, but I stayed quiet. "The fighting," she said, "the stress, they notice." I nodded again. "And," I asked. She swallowed. "We were thinking maybe it would help if you were around more, like before." There it was. Around more. Like before. My son finally spoke. "We need stability," he said. "The kids need it." I leaned back slowly. "And what about me?" I asked. They didn't answer. That silence screamed. I looked at my daughter carefully. "You said there was something you didn't tell me," I said. She nodded. "Yes." She took a deep breath. "We almost separated," she admitted. "Last month." My heart dropped. The room went quiet. "We didn't want to worry you," she added quickly. I closed my eyes for a moment. All those nights, I wasn't invited over. All that sudden distance. All that quiet. It made sense now. "You were falling apart," I said softly, "and you pushed me away." She cried. "We thought we could handle it," she said. "We didn't want to lean on you." "But you leaned away instead," I thought. My son jumped in. "And now things are getting worse," he said. "The kids are anxious, they miss you." I nodded slowly. "So now you want me back in the middle," I said. They didn't deny it. Something inside me broke open then. Not anger. Truth. "I was never just visiting," I said quietly. "I was holding things together." My daughter sobbed. "We didn't realize," she said. "I did," I replied, "and it cost me." My son leaned forward. "So what are you saying?" he asked. That you won't help. I looked at him. I'm saying, I replied carefully, that help cannot mean disappearance. He frowned. You're making this about you. Yes, I said, because it always was, you just didn't see it. The room went still. I stood up slowly. I love my grandchildren, I said, and I care about your family. My daughter looked hopeful. But, I continued, I will not move back into chaos without respect. Her face fell. What does that mean? She asked. It means, I said, if I'm around, I'm included, not hidden, not pushed away when things feel calm. My son shook his head. This isn't about you feeling included. I looked at him sharply. It always was, I said. We argued quietly for a long time. Not shouting. Careful words, defensive words, tired words. They wanted me available. I wanted to be valued. Those are not the same thing. Finally, my daughter asked the question she had been avoiding. So are you going to help us or not? I looked at her. I looked at my son. I looked at the space between them that had been cracking for months. I need time, I said. They both reacted at once. We don't have time, my son snapped. You didn't give me time before, I replied calmly. You just removed me. That silenced him. I will not rush back into something that almost broke me, I continued. Not without changes. What changes? My daughter asked. I hesitated. Because once you say them out loud, there is no going back. Respect, I said. Communication. And boundaries. They didn't like that list. I left shortly after. No agreement. No plan. Just heavy air and unanswered questions. As I drove home, my hands trembled on the steering wheel. Not because I was unsure. Because I knew the next step would be painful for all of us. When people realize they need you, they don't always accept the terms. They test them. That night, my phone buzzed again. A message from my son. If you don't step up, the kids will suffer. I stared at the screen. Because now the pressure had shifted. They weren't asking anymore. They were placing responsibility on my shoulders again. And the next decision I made would decide whether I stayed a support or became the scapegoat. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I read my son's message again. If you don't step up, the kids will suffer. That sentence sat heavy on my chest. It wasn't a request. It wasn't love. It was blame being prepared in advance. I set my phone down and pressed my palms against the table, breathing slowly. I had carried many things in my life, bobbies, groceries, grief, silence, but guilt had always been the heaviest. And my son knew it. He knew where to press. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my grandchildren's faces. I heard their voices. I imagined them sitting in rooms filled with tension, hearing words they didn't understand but still felt. I whispered into the dark, Lord, don't let love be used as a weapon. Because that's what this was becoming. The next morning, I woke with a headache and a decision I wasn't ready to make yet. I didn't call them. Instead, I went for a walk. The air was cool and the street was quiet. Leaves crunched under my feet as I moved slowly, letting my thoughts catch up with my body. I thought about my own childhood, about how my mother carried everything without complaint, how she never asked who would hold her when she got tired. I had learned from her, and I had paid the price. When I returned home, my phone was buzzing again. My daughter this time. Mom, she said quickly, he didn't mean it like that. I sighed. He always means it like that. She was quiet. We're scared, she admitted. Things are falling apart. I know, I said, but falling apart doesn't give you the right to crush me under it. She started to cry. We don't know how to fix this, she said. That doesn't mean I should disappear again, I replied. She whispered, I don't want to lose you. I closed my eyes. You already did, I said softly. You just didn't notice. That afternoon, my granddaughter came over with her father. She ran to me and hugged me tight, like she was afraid I might vanish. I'm glad you're here, she said. Those words nearly broke me. Her father smiled awkwardly. She's been asking about you. I'm right here, I replied. We sat together in the living room. My granddaughter talked about school, about friends, about little worries that felt big to her. I listened, really listened, the way I always had. When she finished, she looked at me seriously. Why don't you come over like before? She asked. I looked at her father. He looked away. I chose my words carefully. Because sometimes grown-ups forget how to take care of each other, I said, and I had to remember how to take care of myself. She nodded slowly. Will you still love us? She asked. Always. That answer didn't need thinking. I always will, I said, pulling her close. After they left, my house felt very quiet. But it wasn't lonely. It felt honest. That evening, my son came again. No warning. He stood in the doorway like he used to when he was young and angry. You're punishing us, he said. I didn't invite him in. I'm protecting myself, I replied. He scoffed, at the kids' expense. I felt the old anger rise, but I held it down. Don't use them, I said firmly. They're already hurting, he snapped, and you're making it worse. I stepped closer to him. No, I said. You are, by pretending I'm the solution instead of part of the family. He laughed bitterly. You always think you're right, he said. I shook my head. I think I'm tired of being wronged, I replied. He stared at me, eyes sharp. So what happens now? He asked. I hesitated. Because this was the moment. The one that decides everything. I will be present, I said slowly, but not absorbed. He frowned. What does that even mean? It means, I said, I will not live in the middle of your problems. I will support from the side. That's not enough, he said. It has to be, I replied. He shook his head. If things get worse, he said, this will be on you. I felt my chest tighten. But I didn't back down. No, I said quietly. It will be on the choices you made before you needed me again. He stared at me for a long time. Then he said something that chilled me. You're choosing yourself over your family. I met his eyes. No, I replied. I'm choosing myself so I can still be family. He turned and walked away without another word. That night, I sat at my table and cried. Not loud. Not messy. Just tears sliding down my face as I finally allowed myself to feel the weight of it all. Loving people who don't know how to love you back properly is exhausting. I had loved them more than myself for years, and it almost killed me. The next morning, I received a call that changed everything. It wasn't from my son. It wasn't from my daughter. It was from the school. There's been an incident, the woman said. Your granddaughter asked for you. My heart dropped. What kind of incident? I asked. She hesitated. We think it would be best if you came right away. My hands shook as I grabbed my keys. Because now it wasn't about boundaries or respect. It was about a child who needed safety. And I knew whatever I did next would finally answer the question no one had asked out loud yet. Would they only want me around when things were breaking? Or would they finally understand what it meant to keep me? Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. When I got the call from the school, my hands would not stop shaking. There's been an incident, the woman had said. Your granddaughter asked for you. Not her parents. Me. I didn't stop to think. I grabbed my bag and my keys and left the house as fast as my legs would carry me. My heart was beating so loud I could hear it in my ears. On the drive there, my mind raced. Was she hurt? Was she scared? Was she crying? I kept whispering, "Please be okay, please be okay." By the time I reached the school, my chest felt tight. The front office was quiet when I walked in. Too quiet. The woman at the desk recognized my name immediately. "She's in the counselor's office," she said gently. I didn't wait for directions. I followed the hallway down until I saw the door. When I stepped inside, my granddaughter looked up. Her eyes filled with tears. "Grandma," she whispered. I rushed to her and pulled her into my arms. "I'm here," I said. "I'm right here." She held onto me like she was afraid I might disappear. The counselor cleared her throat. "She had a panic episode," she said. "She became overwhelmed in class." I felt my heart crack. "What happened?" I asked. The counselor looked at my granddaughter. "Do you want to tell her?" She nodded slowly. "They were yelling last night," she said softly. "I couldn't sleep." My jaw tightened. "Yelling? Again?" "I told the teacher my stomach hurt," she continued, "but it was really my chest." I rubbed her back gently. "You did the right thing," I said. "She asked if she could call you," the counselor added. "She said you make her feel safe." That sentence stayed with me. Safe. They called my daughter and her husband. They arrived 20 minutes later. My daughter looked panicked when she saw us. "Oh my God," she said, rushing over. "Are you okay?" My granddaughter nodded, but didn't let go of me. The counselor explained everything. Stress at home. Anxiety signs. A need for calm. I watched my daughter's face fall. "We didn't realize it was affecting her like this," she said. I didn't say anything. Because I had realized. A long time ago. They decided to let my granddaughter go home early. As we walked to the car, she held my hand tight. "Can I stay with you tonight?" she asked quietly. My daughter froze. My son-in-law looked uncomfortable. "We'll talk about that," my daughter said. My granddaughter's grip tightened. I looked at my daughter. "She needs calm," I said gently. My daughter nodded slowly. "Okay." That was how she ended up at my house that night. I made her soup and helped her change into pajamas. She sat on my couch with a blanket around her shoulders, looking smaller than I had ever seen her. "You're safe here," I said. She nodded. That night, she slept peacefully. No crying. No nightmares. Just rest. I sat in the chair beside her for a long time, watching her breathe. And I felt something heavy settle in my chest. This was what they had pushed away. Not just me. Stability. My daughter came by later that evening. She looked tired. "I didn't know it was this bad," she said. "I know," I replied. She sighed. "She asked for you." "Yes," I said. "I feel like I'm failing," she admitted. I softened. "You're overwhelmed," I said. "There's a difference." She looked at her sleeping daughter. "She needs you," she whispered. I nodded. "She needs peace." My daughter looked at me. "Can you help us?" she asked quietly. I held her gaze. "I already am," I said, "but it has to change." She nodded quickly. "Anything." Those words worried me. Because people say anything when they are scared. The next morning, my son arrived. He looked shaken when he saw where his daughter had slept. "She had an episode?" he asked. "Yes," I replied. He rubbed his face. "She asked for you," he said. "Yes," I replied again. Silence filled the room. "We didn't mean for this to happen," he said. "I know," I replied, "but it did." He looked at his daughter, then at me. "So what now?" he asked. That question carried more weight than he realized. Because now, the center of the family had shifted. The children were feeling the cracks. And the old way of pushing me aside no longer worked. "I will help," I said slowly, "but not like before." He frowned. "What do you mean?" he asked. I took a deep breath. It means, I said, you don't decide when I matter. He looked uncomfortable. It means, I continued, I am not a backup plan. My daughter nodded. My son hesitated. You're asking us to change everything, he said. No, I replied. I'm asking you to stop breaking it. Silence followed. Later that day, my granddaughter looked up at me and asked a question that stayed with me. Are you going to leave again? She asked. My throat tightened. No, I said softly, but things may look different. She nodded. I just don't want everyone mad all the time, she said. I hugged her close. Neither did I. That night, after everyone left, my phone buzzed. A message from my son. We've been talking. There's a decision we need to make. My stomach tightened. Because decisions made without me had never gone well. And whatever they were planning now would decide whether I stayed a steady presence or became the solution they leaned on until they felt comfortable pushing me away again. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. That night, I barely slept. My son's message stayed on my phone like a weight. We've been talking. There's a decision we need to make. Every time someone said decision in my life, it usually meant I wasn't part of it. I lay in bed listening to my granddaughter's soft breathing from the next room. She had asked to sleep with the light on, just a little lamp by the bed. I didn't argue. I understood fear that comes quietly. She slept peacefully. That alone told me something important. In the morning, my daughter arrived early. Too early. She looked nervous. Can we talk? She asked. I nodded and poured us both some tea. We sat at the table like we used to, before life got complicated. We've been thinking, she said slowly, about what's best for the kids. I listened. She took a breath. Things aren't stable right now, and we don't want them feeling scared again. I nodded. Neither do I. She hesitated. We were wondering if maybe it would help if they stayed with you more often. There it was. Not with permission. Not with planning. Just gently placed on my shoulders. How often? I asked. She glanced away. For a while. That phrase has no end date. For how long? I pressed. She swallowed, until things calmed down. I set my cup down carefully. And what happens when they do? I asked. She didn't answer. Later that afternoon, my son came. He looked serious. We think the kids need structure, he said. Consistency. I agree, I replied. And you provide that, he continued. I waited. So we were thinking, he said, maybe they could stay with you during the week. During the week. My chest tightened. You mean, I said slowly, live with me? He nodded. Temporarily, he added quickly. Temporary always becomes permanent when it's convenient. In school, I asked. You can manage, he said. I stared at him. You decided this without asking me, I said. He sighed. We knew you'd say yes. That hurt more than anything. Because they didn't ask. They assumed. My granddaughter walked in then, rubbing her eyes. Are you leaving again? She asked my son. He knelt down. No, baby. Am I staying with Grandma? She asked. My daughter looked at me. I realized something then. They had already told her. Before telling me. I felt something sharp in my chest. You talked to her before me, I said quietly. My son shifted. We were just preparing her. You prepared her, I replied, before preparing me. Silence filled the room. After they left, I sat alone. My granddaughter was in the next room drawing quietly. I stared at the table and thought about everything they were asking. Not helping. Not visiting. Raising again. Carrying again. Centering my life around fixing theirs. And the hardest part, A part of me wanted to say yes, because love doesn't disappear just because it's been misused. But another part of me knew the truth. If I said yes without boundaries, I would disappear again. That evening, my sister came by. I told her everything. She listened quietly. "They want you to take the children," she said finally. "Yes," I replied. "And did they ask?" she asked. "No," I said. She nodded slowly. "Then this isn't about the kids." "What is it about?" I asked. "Control," she said, "and comfort." That word hit hard. Comfort. For them. Not for me. That night, my granddaughter sat beside me on the couch. "Are you mad?" she asked. "No," I said gently. "Are you sad?" she asked. I thought about it. "I'm careful," I replied. She leaned into me. "I like it here," she said softly. My throat tightened. "I know," I whispered. And that was the hardest part. Because the child was innocent. The adults were not. Later, my phone buzzed again. A message from my son. "We need an answer soon. The kids can't wait." I stared at the screen. They had turned urgency into pressure. Again. But this time, something was different. I wasn't confused. I wasn't afraid. I was clear. I typed slowly. "We will talk tomorrow, all of us." 3 dots appeared. Then disappeared. Then appeared again. Finally, he replied. "Okay." I set my phone down and took a deep breath. Because tomorrow, I would have to say the words that change everything. Words that could protect me. Or break the pattern forever. And I knew one thing for sure. If I said yes the wrong way, they would need me most. And still never want me around. I woke up early that morning. Before the sun. Before the house made a sound. I sat at the edge of my bed and listened to my own breathing. In the next room, my granddaughter slept peacefully. No tossing, no whispering, no fear waking her in the night. That told me everything I needed to know. I made breakfast slowly. Eggs, toast, tea. The same way I used to when my children were small. Back then, mornings were loud, busy, full of plans made without rest. Today felt different. Today felt honest. They arrived just after 10. My son. My daughter. Her husband. All together. Like a meeting. They sat across from me at the table, serious faces, prepared words. I noticed how no one asked how I was feeling. No one asked what I wanted. They were ready to receive an answer. Not to hear one. My daughter spoke first. "We've talked," she said, "and we really think this is best for the kids." I nodded slowly. "For them," I said. She hesitated, "and for everyone." I folded my hands on the table. "Before I answer," I said calmly, "I need to say something." They leaned in slightly. I looked at each of them. "You didn't want me around," I said, "until things broke." My son shifted in his chair. "That's not fair," he started. "It's honest," I replied. Silence followed. "When life felt stable," I continued, "I was told to rest, to step back, to stay out of the way." My daughter looked down. "But when fear came," I said, "when the children felt it, when things fell apart, suddenly I mattered again." No one spoke. I continued. "You didn't ask me if I could carry this again. You assumed I would." My son exhaled sharply. "Because you always have." I nodded. "And that," I said softly, "is the problem." My daughter wiped her eyes. "We didn't mean to hurt you," she said. "I know," I replied, "but intent doesn't erase impact." She nodded slowly. "So will you take the kids?" she asked. I took a deep breath. "I will help," I said, "but not the way you want." My son frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means," I said carefully, "I will not disappear into your problems again." They waited. I will not raise children in a home where my voice only matters during emergencies, I continued. And I will not be pushed aside once things feel calm. My daughter looked nervous. So you're saying no? She asked. I'm saying not like this, I replied. I stood up slowly. I love my grandchildren, I said, and they are always welcome here. My granddaughter peeked around the corner then, listening quietly. But, I continued, I will not take responsibility for fixing what you refuse to face. My son stood up too. You're choosing yourself, he said. Yes, I replied, for the first time. That's selfish, he snapped. I looked him straight in the eyes. No, I said. What was selfish was using my love without respecting my life. The room went quiet. I turned to my granddaughter and knelt down. Sweetheart, I said gently, you can always come to Grandma's house. She nodded. But, I continued, your parents have things they need to work on too. She looked at her parents, then back at me. You won't leave, she asked. I smiled softly. No, I said, I won't disappear. Her shoulders relaxed. My daughter broke down then. We don't know how to do this without you, she cried. I walked over and hugged her. You were never meant to do it without effort, I said. I just hid how hard it was for me. She nodded through tears. My son said nothing, but something in his face had changed. Not anger. Understanding. They left shortly after. No shouting. No drama. Just quiet. My granddaughter stayed the weekend. We cooked together, we laughed, we rested. On Sunday evening, her parents picked her up. They hugged her tightly. And they thanked me. Not because they needed me, but because they saw me. Weeks passed. Things changed. Not perfectly, but honestly. My children stopped speaking for me. Stopped deciding without me. Stopped assuming. They still struggled. But they owned it. And I stayed present, not consumed. One afternoon, my son came by alone. I didn't know how much we relied on you, he said quietly. I know, I replied. And I didn't know how little we gave back, he added. That mattered. That night, I sat alone with my tea and thought about everything. They didn't want me around. Until they needed me most. But what they really needed was not my sacrifice. It was my truth. And when I finally stopped shrinking to make them comfortable, I didn't lose my family. I taught them how to keep me. If this story touched you, subscribe for more real emotional stories like this. Like this video so others can hear it. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? Because somewhere out there, another woman is being pushed aside. Until the day she's needed most. And she deserves to be seen before that day comes.